Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Miles, and this is X-Raised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. If you've been listening to our recent conversations, our last episode was about the market meltdown and the AI sell off. This time, let's go focus on a deeper signal behind that reaction, the release of open source contract review code by Anthropic and what it reveals about value, defensibility, and the future of AI powered industries. Joining us for her 52nd episode here at X Rays is someone our audience knows very well and whose influence continues to expand. Laina Chan. She's an award-winning barrister and the founder of and CEO of MiAI Law, recently recognized among Australia's women to watch in the legal sector, and she continues to speak and influence globally. Also, back with us is a returning voice our audience appreciates for his clarity and market realism, David Ioannidis. He is a portfolio manager at Rolling Capital Management, former fixed income trading leader at JP Morgan, and an advisor helping early stage companies grow and raise capital. Welcome back, Laina and Dave. How are you guys?
Thanks,
Well,
Miles. How
thanks.
are you?
Thank you. I'm very well. And it's great to have you both once again. And last time we talked about the market finally adjusting to reality. And this one feels like the technical trigger behind that shift. So let's see, beyond what the tool actually does, what signal did the Anthropic's release of contract review code really send to the market and to companies building on AI? So Dave, let's start.
Want me
Maybe
to
we can
jump in?
start
Yeah,
with you
sure.
from
Yeah,
a
so I
market
think
perspective.
I think what it signals, and it makes complete sense as these businesses grow and build out, is that the foundation layer wants to own more of the workflow experience. And what that means is that prompts and the user interface aren't really durable modes, particularly in simplistic workflows. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what it means in the legal space, which I think's a little different, but I think ultimately they are stepping in to face customers directly where there normally would have been a software product sitting in between the technology and those end users. And so it's a change in their model. It's changing the bargaining power, what they can charge and how sticky their products are for their customers. And I think ultimately a little bit like we talked about in the last episode, the consequence is that multiples for a lot of businesses that did sit between the foundation models and end users are challenged and will continue to be challenged. And then differentiation between the products that do well in creating their own moat and defensibility will really make a difference going forward.
How about you, Lena? Would you like to add something from inside the legal industry?
I've been thinking about this relative to medical. There's been a few medical startups which have been very, very successful. Some started by doctors and some not, where they have been able to upload all of the medical research
Mm-hmm.
into their model. And then they've been able to use, I assume, RAG to search and return answers to these doctors to help them diagnose their patients. And they've been able to do this and become very successful. Some doctors have bootstrapped their way up to, multi-billion dollar companies. But the difference between medical and law is that it doesn't matter whether the research was done in Colombia, whether it was done in the UK, whether it was done anywhere in the world. If you've got that disease, you've got that disease. And you can retrieve the research reports and it will be useful to the doctor, regardless of where the provenance of that medical research is. There's no hierarchy, right? You don't have to say that, well, because this lowly researcher or whatever, they were the person who made this breakthrough or whatever it is. We can't regard that lowly researcher's work as valuable as maybe someone who came from, I don't know, Harvard Medical School or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But we have all those constraints in law. And so I'm thinking that when that law properly done has a deep vertical, and so when Anthropic released their contract review code, that didn't have any legal reasoning or anything built into it. All it is allowing the user to upload a precedent document, and then you being able to run a comparison against that document so that it will redline and mark up all the differences. And then you can then ask it a few questions about it yourself, and it will hopefully scroll to the relevant clauses in the contract and might be able to answer some questions for you. All of this is just based upon the pre-training knowledge of the language model. So there's no competitive moat. And that's what most contract review features I understand on the market are like. And that all they're offering is a comparison against a benchmark, and then they will highlight it and tell you what the differences are. They don't tell you whether the changes are good or bad or something for you to be concerned about. And this week, I think, or last week, this week, I don't remember. This week actually, we were demoing to an insurance company, and they had trialed every product on the market. They had tried Lexis, they had tried Westlaw, they had tried other contract review features. And they said one of the features identified that the insurance policy supposedly didn't have a particular clause, because they had identified that it was different. But actually it was there, it was just drafted differently. So in substance, it was the same. But these contract review features, like Anthropics, it wouldn't be able to check whether, I don't think, because it's just comparing against the benchmark, as to whether or not in substance the clause is there, and also whether it matters or not that it's been drafted differently. So I think releases of these open source code to allow anybody to do this themselves, do a bit of prompt engineering, really takes away the moat from all these contract review features who are basically doing the same thing. And then I think that's why the company, the industry or the market is reacting. But I don't know which of the publicly traded companies are actually offering this contract review feature. I think maybe Copilot, maybe Westlaw might, maybe in their co-counsel, they might. I'm not sure, I'm not sure. I'm just thinking some of the market reaction might be just a knee-jerk reaction.
Well,
I think what it does is it spotlights really that, like, if you're saying essentially it's doing the same thing, maybe not quite as well as some of the incumbent contract review products, what it does really do is spotlight that, irrespective of whether you're using it in the Claude plugin or whether you're using one of the incumbent products, without all of the governance and the attribution to the right sources and the reasoning that's built into our tool, it's spotlighting that we stand out further again, which I think is important.
Yeah, and that differentiation that you mentioned, Laina, is really on point, because it suggests the real impact wasn't the software itself, but the message capabilities are accelerating faster than business models can adapt. And if that signal is about value shifting.
No, it's that these companies are releasing products and competing with their own clients. So OpenAI did it first in December. It released its contract review feature. Nobody reacted, but it did it. So then it's gobbling up its own. It's gobbling up its own clients, and it has to. Otherwise, they need revenue streams.
Well, they're changing their revenue model from dealing with the intermediary to dealing with the end user. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And Dave, when a foundation model provider gives away capabilities that vendors once sold as, what you mentioned in our previous episode, premium differentiation, what does that reveal about where real value actually lives?
I guess the value in the intermediary platform that we're kind of saying is being part of the daily workflow. So, already being embedded in a business. I think, having the right plugins to the right set of data, if we're talking about from a legal perspective. And then it's the whole trust infrastructure around, permissioning, liability handling, the things that enterprises pay for because it reduces risk. Again, very important in the legal world, and Laina can talk more about that than I can. But people are happy to pay. Another example I would say is, another business that I've kind of been looking at I keep questioning whether these developments, including the agentic stuff, means that it's much easier for people to go and replicate what this company's charging for. And ultimately, in the end, the thing that you really don't realize until you deep dive into the detail is that it's not very easy just to come up and make an agent and then have all the right permissionings and guardrails in place and all this type of stuff. So I kind of see it the same way here. The value for the intermediary platforms is the fact that they're already on the desktop, that they're part of the daily workflow, that they've got the audit trails and permissioning and all those types of things. So, until the LLMs can start rolling that stuff out, there is still value in these products. And as we've talked about before, the products that really differentiate themselves, I think, can actually shine in this environment as opposed to the ones who are going to kind of fade away because they're just glorified wrappers.
Maintaining trust indeed is really important. I mean, it's the huge edge, especially where the data is coming from. Just like I remember, Laina.
It's not, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I remember you telling the audience about the pinpoint referencing. I mean, where did it really come from? The answers are not supposedly hallucinating. And which brings us to a word we hear constantly in AI. We hear moat everywhere in AI, specifically from both of your perspectives. What does a true moat look like in this space, and why being early or maybe layering prompts and workflows doesn't guarantee defensibility?
Yeah,
just to make a comment, it's not just, being able to provide auditability and provenance and satisfying governance. There's also, if you're using the language models directly as a direct plugin, you're not necessarily sure as to what it is they're going to do with your data. You don't know where your data is going either. So if you are using one of these intermediaries, some, maybe not all, would have made sure that your data is safe, that there may not be any cross-border leakages of your data crossing borders. And, they may have gotten all of the relevant security sign-offs, etc. So I think, and you may be more confident that your data is being handled in a way that is aligned with your own confidentiality and privacy obligations to your clients.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's important.
Yeah, you have that. I remember military grade security that you have in MiAI Law. If I remember it correctly, during our first,
well, we do, but we're
episode.
doing it a bit differently now. But also, we're in the process. By the end of the week, we'll have migrated everything to under Microsoft Azure umbrella, so that we're no longer sending anything directly to OpenAI. It goes through, everything goes through Azure, and everything will then stay in Australia.
So safe.
Yeah.
Well, they tell me that they're a security company.
Okay, we can talk about that.
They're just a small company that's been dealing with security for a few years.
Okay. So about
I think with respect to the moat, I mean, a moat really the early mover thing, the whole thing of early mover advantage or first mover advantage, it has been true for many years in many spaces. But I think these days, just because you're the first tool to roll out, unless you've got a real moat, it's kind of irrelevant. We're not the first legal AI tool out there, but from my understanding and what we've talked about, we've got things that nearly anyone else doesn't, we think. And, a moat will survive kind of all the improvements and the bundling up and the releases and that from these foundation models, because of the actual, the IP and the reasoning and the first principled things that go into the system that we deliver and the benefits that it gives. So I think, moats these days are, if you go into a VC, the first thing they'll say is, what's your moat? And explaining that clearly is very, very important when you're trying to raise money. But moats are disappearing very quickly, particularly when, we keep coming back to the point of, glorified wrappers. If the foundation model cuts out that glorified wrapper, it's very, very difficult to argue they've got a moat. even if they've done a lot of investment and they've got some kind of small tweaks and that, because the improvements are coming so quickly through these systems that there's nothing to say that the tweaks and the value add pieces that those intermediation companies have done are not going to be rolled out by the foundation models very, very soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you like to add something?
But you know, being first mover is important, really important. But then we have Yahoo as an example that being first mover doesn't necessarily keep you on top. We have this real estate company in Australia, Domain. They were the first mover. And then the New Zealand company came along in stealth mode, realestate.com.au, that Domain, I have inside knowledge, that Domain were just ignoring and didn't think that real estate was really going to be a threat. And then it was in stealth mode. And then now it's burst, years ago, it burst into the market. And people look at domain.com.au and they look at realestate.com.au. This is when you're trying to buy property and rent, etc. So you can have companies operating at stealth mode because and then suddenly they're just there, but actually it's taken a while to get there. And they can knock off the incumbents. Google came along and knocked off Yahoo because I remember one day my husband said, I had been using Yahoo to do my search. And then he said, no, you've got to try Google. It's much better. And, and then we all know what happened to Yahoo. I mean, still there, struggling along, but it's not completely dead. But then Google came along and knocked off. So the first mover is really important, but it doesn't guarantee longevity.
Well, I think first mover, if you're rolling
keep
out
going
a
on
product
mute.
to someone who's behind you, is super important. But first mover is not the primary determinant. The primary determinant is the quality of the product. So, in Laina's example, and I'm not making a call on whether realestate.com is better than Domain or not, but it doesn't matter that Domain was first if realestate.com's got a better product.
We've got so many examples, don't we? We have MySpace.
Yeah,
and
MySpace
that's
is
completely dead now. There's Facebook. And so you have to, just because you're the first mover is great, because if you've been able to come and you've been able to embed yourself everywhere, like for example, if another product showed up and tried to compete with LinkedIn, I think it'll be really difficult. LinkedIn has really covered the field, hasn't it? I mean, everyone is on it. Imagine if you had another professional networking. It really started off as a job sales platform, job advertising platform. It'd be very hard for that LinkedIn to be knocked off its pedestal, don't you think?
Well, like in your Google Yahoo example, so you would need to call me and say, hey, you should try LinkedIn version 2 because it's got A, B, C, and D that are far better than LinkedIn version 1. I'm not going to
then I would say to you,
unless it's got improvements in it that are meaningful enough for me to make the effort to take away that stickiness to LinkedIn.
But it's not just that though, Dave. I would say to you, but I have over 3,000 followers. I've got, it's my platform. It's working for me. I can't then move to a new platform where I have to start from scratch.
Yeah, sorry. As someone with the profile that's different, as just a user wanting to optimize, I think it's a slightly different question. But yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
And so you've got platform moats. You've got technology moats. You've got, those are the two main things, right? So whether you're just so embedded and everyone's using it, it's so embedded, like other people in the ecosystem are also using it. It makes it difficult to switch to something else. Like for me now, if I wanted to switch from Apple to Samsung, I'd be like, oh no, they've got me. It's on my Macs, it's on my laptops, it's on everything. I just can't.
But also, I guess it's also it's a trust, the workflow integration. Your preferences, and of course the domain expertise around it. And if that's true, then the next shift feels almost inevitable. So does this shift push more firms toward building their own AI tools? As base models.
They don't have the domain expertise.
Well, it depends.
They have the legal expertise, but they don't have the tech.
Yeah.
This is really hard. It's just like really, really hard to do properly. It's not like, we have Arjun with his postdoctorate from NYU in machine learning. We've got 10 developers underneath him. They're all like at the top from, IIT, which is the Indian MIT. And then we've got me, it's really hard, it's not like it's not an easy exercise to build a product that has a true technology moat. It's really difficult.
I think
but if you want to have a play and do your simple comparisons against the precedent, etc., to see how it's different, I guess, of course, you can do those things in-house.
Yeah, and I think
to deliver a true, but to deliver a true deep vertical, that's really hard. That can't be done in-house.
Yeah, I think specifically to law and our story at MiAI, that's 100% correct. But if you're talking more broadly, if we're just talking about I guess adoption from end users to foundation model products, there is no doubt that simplistic workflows, people are going to try and do that stuff in-house, try and save money, make their own tweaks, have their own version. The whole you buy a white label product, it's very difficult to go backwards and forwards to the provider to have changes made. If you have your own native, I guess, system that you've built on a foundation model, it's much easier for you to work. It has a whole lot of risks, though, which is why I say in the legal space, it's much harder, as we just explained. But for simplistic workflows, I think about things like, maybe financial planning, where you're literally creating cash flows and doing modeling and that type of stuff. I've been playing around with that personally myself in the last few weeks, just trying to see how much I can push the model to think outside the square and come up with slightly different ways. And it's really interesting to see how some things it struggles with, and other things it's really, really good at. I think in-house usage and trying to replicate intermediary products will continue to grow depending on what sector we're talking about and how much governance and accountability and that's required. I'm not saying that cash flow modeling for financial planners doesn't have accountability, but I'm just saying that it's a lot easier to fiddle around with numbers than it is to necessarily point to legislation and draw conclusions on a first principle basis with respect to law.
Yeah. And nowhere in this tension more visible than a contract review. So, which becomes a proving ground for this debate. So as models improve, Laina, what remains uniquely human and non-commoditized? And 5 years from now, what do you think the market will realize it misunderstood about this moment?
I think the best analogy is one that one of my developers came up with, that calculators did not replace the need for humans. And that AI tools are the same. AI tools will help you reduce the time spent doing the grunt work, but it will not reduce the time that you need to spend on judgment, strategy, decision-making. The AI will just unearth the raw material for you to work with. It's not replacing lawyers, but it is replacing the grunt work, in document management, in making chronologies. It's just going to make it faster. You still need the human review. So long as language models are just probabilistic and they don't really understand what they're doing, and they're going in there and searching, if people truly understand how these language models work and how the constraints within the system, they would not be firing all of their junior staff, because you need those people to verify the work output of the AI models. It's very dangerous to just rely on it and you go, all right, it's prepared a chronology, for example, and it's all accurate. I'm not going to check it. But you don't know. And I know that some of the big firms have, huge innovation teams themselves, and they try to deliver products like this themselves, but they have problems cross-referencing and linking the line item in the chronology back to the right document. It might link to a completely different document, and it might be a hallucination. And so people might think, it's very seductive, because you just click the prepare chronology button or whatever it is, and it produces this document which looks plausible. But then when you actually go into the detail, there may be heaps of inaccuracies built into it. So it's really just, the analogy is like using a calculator to get you there faster, but it doesn't mean the brain work disappears. You still have to apply your judgment, etc. And definitely, until language models they add some layer onto it where it's not just probabilistic, then you cannot just rely upon the throughput of the language models in any area. It doesn't really matter, whether you're using it for customer service or whether you're using it for marketing, etc. I mean, how many times have we had to get on, a support chat and the chatbot comes out? First thing I ask it always is it human? Because it's so annoying having to deal with these generic AI things. We just have like a very small script and they just keep saying the same thing back to you. So people who think, was it Klarna or
Lana.
Klarna? They got rid of all of the human marketing and support people or whatever, and they rely on the chatbot. It was a disaster for them. I think they had to rehire. People give AI far more credit than they should. Although Google told me that they have been able to convert thousands and thousands and thousands of customers using their own Gemini sales bot. This friend of mine told me there was one customer, an electrician, I think, or plumber, I can't remember. He had the chatbot going for 6 hours. As he was dipping in and out of jobs, he had this conversation going on with the sales bot for over 6 hours because he was trying to work out what Google ads to buy. And at the end of the 6 hours, the sale was closed. And he even said to the sales bot that, I know that you're only a bot, but I really want to meet you.
Oh, that's quite funny.
Quite funny. But the point is, Google got the job done. So, but I've been given the stack or what the stack it was they used to create this bot. I mean, it's all openly available on Gemini. So, done well, it can replace humans, but you always want some human oversight, right? You need to be able to escalate from the bot to a human being.
Yeah, it has to be hybrid at least.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with that, because I have the same frustration with bots, you get stuck in this circle.
Right.
You answer the question, it goes round and round and round. But some of the I touched on this on the last episode, but some of the agentic development is phenomenally good. Like I've watched a demo just recently where agentic AI will dial the phone, call someone up, have a conversation. It'll speak just like we're speaking now. There's intonations and pauses and even some laughing and all that type of stuff that's programmed into it. And it would have a multiple phone call workflow that's all auditable and transcribable and all that type of stuff. But being on the end of the phone to this thing, I had no idea. You would have no idea it's an agent. It never gets upset with someone yelling back at it. So we're moving very quickly into a world where for simple workflows and things that are easily controllable, that there's going to be huge steps. But with respect to your question,
Totally. I've got to share. So I was speaking at this banking summit last year, and one of the co-presenters, they've developed something really great. That how we have all these financial scams where people reach out to you and they pretend that they're somebody. They're like, there's romance scams, there's all kinds of scams, and they reach out to you via social media or WhatsApp or whatever it is, and they engage you in a conversation, and they trap all these people and into this lonely people or whatever. I don't know, vulnerable people who end up giving these people, these scammers money, etc. So there's an Australian company that's come up with, and their strategy, and it's being used by the banks. So they will engage a bot, it's not human, to have these conversations with these scammers and keep these scammers, over the phone, they call you up as well, right? They keep these scammers engaged, and they keep them engaged because their theory is that we've got these scammers engaged, they can't be scamming the real person. So then, I think Commonwealth and people like that use these products, and they have all these different personas that they've created. They've got the little old lady, they've got all these people, and then they activate these agents to speak to these scammers and then taught these scammers. That is so clever. I forgot about that.
It's almost like the old-fashioned version is get them on the phone and then don't hang up, and they can't call anyone else. It's just exactly. A modern version of
get
that.
Them on the phone, don't hang up, engage them, and these are all agents. So in that case, it's just so brilliant.
That's very cool. I hadn't heard that. That's actually very cool.
Me too. Interesting. So thank you so much again, Laina and Dave, for helping us decode what markets reward and what they eventually reprice when the excitement settles. Thank you so much for being here.
No worries.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you.
And if you're a legal professional or a business leader navigating AI adoption, head over to myai.law to check out their tool designed to support judgment, verify legal propositions, and help professionals operate with greater confidence. We're leaving the links for easy access in the description below. Thanks for tuning in. Watch more of our episodes at xrays.com, our podcast on Spotify and Amazon Music. This has been your host, Miles. Stay focused, driven, and inspired with X-Rays.